The morning sky above New Busan Colony turned black as the massive alien ship dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Hyun stood on the command center's observation deck, watching the enormous vessel block out the sun. The ship was bigger than their entire city. Its shadow fell across farms and homes where families were just starting their day. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Sung, the young communications officer. His hands shook as he worked the controls. "It's coming from the alien ship." Hyun nodded and walked to the main screen. Around him, his small team watched nervously. Colonel Bora stood at his right side, her face calm but her eyes worried. Sergeant Minho checked his weapon for the third time in 5 minutes. They all knew what this meant. The screen flickered to life. A huge alien face appeared with 4 arms and clicking mouth parts. Its eyes were like black stones, cold and cruel. Behind the creature, endless rows of soldiers stood in perfect lines. There were so many that Hyun could not see where they ended. "I am General Vextar of the Velkarian Empire," the alien said. Its voice was deep and harsh. "You will surrender your pathetic colony immediately. I have brought 1 million soldiers to take this world. Your small defense force cannot stop us." The alien general spread all 4 arms wide, showing off the massive army behind him. "Look at my power, humans. See the might of the Empire. You have perhaps a few thousand fighters. We have 1 million trained warriors. Surrender now and you may live as our servants." In the colony below, people gathered around public screens. Mothers held their children close. Old farmers who had built this world with their hands stared in fear at the alien army. The mayor of New Busan wiped sweat from his face. Some people were already talking about giving up, but Hyun felt no fear. He had fought in many battles before coming to this peaceful farming world. He knew what real soldiers looked like, and he knew what made humans special. These aliens had numbers, but they did not understand what they were really fighting. "We have superior weapons," Vextar continued. "We have advanced technology. We have ships that can destroy your cities from space. You have nothing that can challenge the Empire. This is your only chance to live." Bora stepped closer to Hyun. "Sir, the math is clear. Even if every person in the colony could fight, we're outnumbered 300 to 1. Maybe we should consider their offer." Hyun looked at her and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had seen impossible odds before and found a way to win. "Bora, you're thinking like a military academy graduate. But this isn't a textbook battle." He turned to face the screen where the alien general waited for an answer. Around the command center, his small staff watched him. They trusted him completely, but they also knew the situation was hopeless. "You have 1 hour to decide," Vextar said. "After that, we will take your world by force. Many will die unnecessarily. Choose wisely, humans." Hyun walked forward until he was directly in front of the camera. His weathered face showed no emotion. His gray hair was neat despite the early morning alert. His uniform was simple. Not fancy like the alien's armor, but it was clean and proud. "I am Captain Hyun, commander of New Busan Colony Defense," he said in a quiet voice. "I have heard your offer, General Vextar." The alien leaned forward, expecting surrender. Behind him, the 1 million soldiers stood ready for an easy victory. In the colony, people held their breath. "You say you have 1 million soldiers," Hyun continued, his voice still calm and steady. "That's very impressive." Vextar's mouth parts clicked with what might have been laughter. "Yes, human. 1 million trained warriors against your tiny force. Surely you see the wisdom in surrender." Hyun nodded slowly, as if thinking carefully about the alien's words. Then he looked directly into the camera, directly into the alien general's black eyes. "Good," Hyun said with deadly quiet confidence. "I have 1 million targets." The transmission ended. The screen went black. For a moment, nobody in the command center spoke. Then Sung let out a nervous laugh. "Sir, did you just declare war on a 1 million soldier army?" "No," Hyun replied, turning to face his team. "I just told them what kind of fight they've picked." Bora shook her head. "Sir, with respect, how can we possibly fight those numbers? Even if we use every advantage, every trick we know, the math doesn't work." Hyun walked to the tactical display showing their colony. New Busan was spread across a wide valley, with farms and small towns connected by rivers and roads. The main city sat in the center, surrounded by agricultural areas and mining operations in the hills. "Bora, you're still thinking like they think," he said, pointing at the display. "They see soldiers and weapons and tactics. They think war is about armies fighting armies." He touched different areas on the map as he spoke. They don't see that every farmer knows exactly how much explosive is in mining charges. They don't see that every mechanic knows how to modify engines and weapons. They don't see that every tunnel and road and building in this colony was built by people who will defend it with everything they have. Minho stepped forward. Sir, I understand the spirit, but we need a real plan. How do we actually fight them? Hyun smiled again, and this time it was warmer. We don't fight their army, Minho. We make them fight our world. Every person, every tool, every piece of equipment becomes part of our defense. They want to conquer New Busan? Fine. But they'll have to destroy it completely to do it, and we'll make sure that costs them everything. He turned to Sung. Send a message to all sector chiefs. Execute Protocol Jericho immediately, and patch me through to the colony-wide communication system. Within minutes, every screen and speaker in New Busan carried Hyun's voice. Citizens of New Busan, you have seen the alien threat. They demand our surrender, but this is our home. Every field, every home, every workshop was built by our hands. Today, we use those same hands to defend what we've built. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are not soldiers, but we are not helpless. We are farmers and engineers and builders. We know this land better than any invader ever could. And today, we will show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. Across the colony, people looked at each other with new determination. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Anger, pride, the stubborn refusal to give up that had brought their families across the stars to build a new world. In the command center, alarms began sounding as Valkyrian dropships separated from the main vessel and began their descent. Thousands of alien warriors were coming to crush their small colony. But Captain Hyun was no longer worried about numbers. He was thinking about all the ways a farming colony could become a weapon in the right hands, and his hands had learned a few tricks over the years. The first Valkyrian dropships hit New Busan's atmosphere like falling meteors. General Vexistar watched from his command ship as hundreds of landing craft carried his soldiers toward what should be an easy victory. The human colony looked peaceful and defenseless from space, just farms and small buildings scattered across green valleys. First wave report successful landing, announced his aide. No resistance detected. The humans appear to have retreated to their central city. Vextar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. As expected, they realize they cannot fight us in open battle. Begin the advance to their main settlement. This will be over before the day ends. But down on the planet's surface, Captain Hyun was not retreating. He stood in the colony's main operations center, watching dozens of screens that showed his people moving into position. Protocol Jericho was not about running away. It was about turning their entire world into a weapon. Minho report, Hyun said into his communication device. Mining charges are set along the main approach roads, came the reply. But sir, these aren't military explosives. They're for breaking up rock, not fighting soldiers. That's exactly what makes them perfect, Hyun replied. Military explosives are designed to kill soldiers efficiently. Mining charges are designed to move mountains. Let them feel the difference. Across the colony, people were busy with tasks that looked strange for a battle. Farmers drove their large harvesting machines into barns and began welding metal plates to their sides. Engineers climbed onto irrigation pumps and attached new pipes that pointed toward the roads. Even the teenagers who had stayed behind to help were busy in the workshops, following instructions that would have seemed crazy to any military commander. Sung's fingers flew across his control panels as he worked his own kind of magic. Sir, I've got access to the mining network. Every automated excavator, every transport crawler, every piece of heavy equipment is now under our control. Good, said Colonel Bora, studying tactical displays. The aliens have landed in 12 locations. They're moving toward the main roads, just like we predicted. They want to reach the city quickly and end this. Then let's give them a proper welcome, Hyun said. The first Valkyrian unit to encounter the human defense was Alpha Company of the 47th Assault Regiment. They marched confidently down a wide farm road, their energy weapons ready but not really needed. They expected to find frightened farmers hiding in cellars. Instead, the road exploded beneath their feet. Minho had buried mining charges every 100 meters along the route. But these were not small battlefield explosives. These were industrial tools designed to blast through solid rock. When they detonated, the explosions threw earth and stones high into the air and created craters deep enough to swallow buildings. The surviving aliens stumbled out of the smoke and dust, their perfect formation destroyed. Their commander was shouting orders when the second surprise hit them. What looked like a normal farm tractor came around the corner, but it was covered in steel plates and mounted with a mining laser that could cut through solid stone. Behind the controls, Farmer Kim drove his modified machine like he had driven it through fields for 20 years, calm and steady. The mining laser cut through alien armor like it was paper. The tractor's thick plates shrugged off return fire, and when Kim was done, he simply drove back behind the barn and disappeared, leaving the alien unit in chaos. This scene repeated across a dozen locations as Valkyrian forces discovered that fighting farmers was very different from fighting soldiers. Soldiers followed rules and used standard tactics. Farmers used whatever worked, and they knew their land better than any invader ever could. At Landing Zone 7, aliens found themselves attacked by what appeared to be an irrigation system, but Sung had reprogrammed the pumps to spray industrial solvent instead of water. The chemical burned through alien equipment and sent them fleeing in panic. At Landing Zone 3, a group of Valkyrian warriors took cover behind a grain storage building, only to discover that Minho had turned it into a giant bomb. When it exploded, it scattered burning grain over a square kilometer and created a firestorm that lit up the sky. In his command ship, General Vextar watched the casualty reports with growing anger. "How are we losing soldiers to farmers? These humans have no military technology." "Sir," his aide said nervously, "they appear to be using their industrial equipment as weapons. Our intelligence did not prepare us for this kind of warfare." "It doesn't matter what they use," Vextar snarled. "We have 1 million soldiers. They have a few thousand civilians. Send in the second wave. Overwhelm them with numbers." But Captain Hyun had expected this response. As more Valkyrian ships landed, they found that the humans had somehow anticipated exactly where they would arrive. Every landing zone became a trap. Sung had hacked into the colony's weather monitoring system and used it to predict where the alien ships would land based on wind patterns and terrain. Minho had spent months before the invasion hiding surprises in every likely location, and Bora had studied Valkyrian military tactics from old intelligence reports, learning exactly how they liked to deploy their forces. The result was a nightmare for the invading army. They landed expecting easy victories and instead found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Humans would attack suddenly with impossible weapons, then disappear before reinforcements could arrive. A unit of alien engineers tried to set up a communication relay and found themselves under attack by modified agricultural drones. The small flying machines had been turned into tiny bombers, each carrying just enough explosive to destroy equipment but too small and fast for military weapons to hit effectively. Another group attempted to secure a water treatment plant and discovered that the humans had turned the entire facility into a massive chemical weapon. When they entered the building, Sung remotely triggered systems that filled the air with chlorine gas, forcing the aliens to evacuate while wearing protection suits that slowed them down for hours. By the end of the first day, General Vextar had lost over 50,000 soldiers and controlled exactly 0 strategic locations. Every building his forces entered had been booby-trapped. Every road they used had been mined. Every piece of equipment they tried to capture had been sabotaged. "Sir," his aide reported, "the humans are requesting a communication." On the main screen, Captain Hyun appeared again. His uniform was dirty now and there was a cut on his cheek, but he looked as calm as ever. "General Vextar," Hyun said politely, "how are you enjoying your visit to New Busan?" "You cannot win, human," the alien general replied, his voice full of rage. "I still have 900,000 soldiers. You have gained nothing but time." Hyun nodded thoughtfully. "You're right about the numbers, but I think you're missing something important." "What is that?" "Your soldiers are trained to fight other soldiers," Hyun said. "Mine are trained to fix things that break, to build things that last, and to solve problems that don't have easy answers. Today our problem was how to stop a 1-million-soldier army with farming equipment. I think we're doing pretty well so far." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a black screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Outside, his great army was discovering that conquering a human colony was much harder than anyone had thought possible. 7 days had passed since the Valkyrian invasion began, and General Vextar stared at reports that made no sense. His mighty army was being destroyed piece by farmers and shopkeepers. Every day brought new casualties, new problems, new impossible defeats. Sir, we've lost another supply convoy, reported his aide. The humans used modified mining equipment to attack during the night. They hit our fuel depot and disappeared before our patrols could respond. Vextar's forearms trembled with rage. How many soldiers did we lose? 2,000, sir. But that's not the worst part. The aide hesitated. They didn't just destroy our supplies. They stole most of them. This was the pattern that was driving the Velcarian general insane. The humans didn't fight like any enemy he had ever faced. They didn't try to hold territory or win big battles. Instead, they struck like ghosts, took what they needed, and vanished into their familiar landscape. Down in the colony's underground command center, Captain Hune studied the same battle reports with satisfaction. Protocol Jericho was working even better than he had hoped. His people were learning to fight like their ancestors had fought long ago, using the land itself as their greatest weapon. Minho, how did the night raid go? Hyun asked. The sergeant grinned as he cleaned alien weapons they had captured. Better than expected, sir. We got enough fuel to keep our equipment running for another week. Plus, we picked up some interesting Velcarian technology that Sung wants to examine. They left their portable shields behind when they ran, added Bora. Our people are already figuring out how to use them. The farmers are especially creative with that kind of equipment. Sung looked up from a Velcarian communication device he was taking apart. Sir, I've been listening to their radio traffic. They're getting scared. The soldiers are talking about humans like we're some kind of monsters. This made Hyun think. Fear was a weapon he could use. What exactly are they saying? They think we can appear anywhere, anytime, Sung explained. Yesterday, when we hit their eastern camp with those modified tractors, they reported being attacked by demon machines that came from nowhere and vanished into the earth. They don't understand that we know every tunnel, every cave, every hiding place in this whole region. The truth was that New Busan's defenders were using advantages that no military academy taught. They knew exactly where the old mining tunnels ran beneath the colony. They knew which roads would flood when the mountain streams were redirected. They knew how to make a grain silo explode with the force of a military bomb, and they knew how to turn a simple farm irrigation system into a weapon that could stop an armored vehicle. Sir, Bora said, pointing to the tactical display, the aliens are trying a new strategy. They're abandoning the scattered camps and concentrating their forces in 3 large bases. They think it will be harder for us to attack them. Hyun studied the map and smiled. They're still thinking like soldiers. They want to control territory and establish supply lines. Show me their new positions. The display showed 3 heavily fortified Velcarian bases arranged in a triangle around New Busan's main city. Each base held over 200,000 soldiers and was protected by energy shields and automated weapons. It looked like an unbreakable formation. Traditional military thinking says we can't assault those positions, Bora observed. They have too many soldiers and too much firepower. Good thing we're not traditional military, Hyun replied. Minho, remember the old copper mine up in the northern hills? Minho's eyes lit up with understanding. The one with the underground river running beneath it? Sir, that's brilliant. What am I missing? Bora asked. Hyun traced a line on the map with his finger. The Velcarians chose their northern base location because it gives them a good view of our city and excellent defensive positions. But they built it right on top of an old mining area. The ground beneath them is full of tunnels and chambers, and there's an underground river that connects to the main reservoir system. Sung caught on immediately. We could flood the entire area. Or better yet, we could turn their own defensive position into a trap, Hyun finished. But first, we need to make them think we're weakening. Over the next 2 days, the human attacks seemed to become less effective. Velcarian patrols encountered only token resistance. Their supply lines operated without major problems. General Vextar began to believe that his strategy of concentration was working. The humans are running out of surprises, he told his officers. Their scattered attacks are becoming desperate. Soon we will have enough control to begin our final assault on their city. But Captain Hyun was not running out of surprises. He was preparing the biggest surprise of all. In workshops hidden throughout the colony, teams of engineers and mechanics worked on a project that would have seemed impossible to any sane military planner. They were building a weapon out of the colony's water management system, turning pumps and pipes and reservoirs into something that could move mountains. The calculations are insane, one engineer reported to Bora. The pressure we're talking about could destroy half the northern valley. That's the idea. Bora replied calmly. But we need to be precise. Too much force and we hurt our own people. Too little and we just give the aliens a bath. Meanwhile, Minho led teams through the old mining tunnels, placing charges that were much larger than anything they had used before. These were not mining explosives or improvised bombs. These were fusion charges taken from the colony's emergency power system, weapons that could crack bedrock and redirect rivers. Sir, Sung reported, I've tapped into the Velcarian communication networks. They're planning their final assault for tomorrow morning. All 3 bases will attack simultaneously. Hyun nodded. Perfect timing. Are our people ready? The evacuation tunnels are clear, Bora confirmed. All civilians are in the eastern shelters, well away from the impact zone. Our fighters are in position, and the surprise? Minho checked his detonation controls one final time, ready to give the aliens a geology lesson they'll never forget. That night, as Velcarian soldiers prepared for what they believed would be their final victory, Captain Hyun stood on a hill overlooking their northern base. 200,000 alien warriors were camped below, confident in their numbers and their fortifications. You know, he said to Bora, who stood beside him, they never asked the most important question. What question, sir? They never asked why we chose this valley to build our colony in the first place. Hyun smiled as he watched the alien camps spread across the landscape below. Tomorrow morning they're going to find out that some questions have very explosive answers. In the distance, thunder rumbled from the mountains, but there were no clouds in the sky. The sound was coming from deep underground, where old mining tunnels echoed with the movement of vast amounts of water under enormous pressure. The Velcarians heard it too, but they didn't understand what it meant. They were about to learn that fighting humans meant fighting the very ground beneath their feet. Dawn was breaking over New Busan when General Vextar gave the order for his final assault. From his command ship orbiting high above the planet, he watched 3 massive armies begin their coordinated attack on the human city. 200,000 soldiers moved from each fortified base, converging on the settlement like the jaws of a great trap closing. Today we end this embarrassment, he announced to his officers. The humans have caused us losses, but they cannot stand against our full might. By sunset, this world will belong to the Empire. But Captain Hyun was not waiting in the city for the attack to reach him. He stood in a concealed observation post on the eastern hills, watching the alien forces move into position exactly as he had predicted they would. Beside him, Colonel Bora counted units and confirmed ranges while Sergeant Minho made final adjustments to his detonation controls. Northern force is in the primary zone, Bora reported. Western and southern forces are approaching their designated areas. Sung, are you ready? Hyun asked into his communicator. All systems online, sir, came the reply from the underground command center. The engineering teams report maximum pressure in all lines. We're at the point of no return. Hyun took a deep breath and looked one last time at the Velcarian army spread across the valley below. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, the finest warriors of a galactic empire, were about to discover what happened when someone tried to conquer a world that humans had learned to love. Execute, he said quietly. The first explosion came from deep underground, beneath the northern Velcarian base. But this was not the sharp crack of a military explosive. This was the deep, earth-shaking roar of geological forces being unleashed. Minho's fusion charges had cracked the bedrock that held back the underground river system, and millions of tons of water erupted upward with the force of a volcanic explosion. The Velcarian northern base, with its 200,000 soldiers and all their equipment, simply disappeared beneath a wall of water and mud that rose higher than their tallest buildings. The flood carried away weapons, vehicles, and warriors with equal ease, sweeping them down into the valley like toys in a storm drain. But that was only the beginning. Sung's engineering teams had spent days modifying the colony's water management system, turning it into a weapon that could reshape the landscape itself. As the underground reservoirs emptied through the shattered bedrock, they created a chain reaction that triggered secondary floods throughout the valley. The Western Velcarian force found themselves caught in a mudslide as their carefully chosen high ground became a river of liquefied earth. The Southern force discovered that the road they were using had been built over an old stream bed, and when the waters reached them, their entire column was swept away by a flash flood that came from nowhere. General Vextar watched in horror as 3 armies totaling 600,000 soldiers were destroyed in less than an hour. not by superior weapons or clever tactics, but by the planet itself turning against his forces. How is this possible? He screamed at his aides. Humans cannot control natural disasters. But they could, and they had. Years of mining and farming had taught the colonists exactly how water moved through their valley. They knew which rocks were solid and which would crack under pressure. They knew where the underground streams flowed and how much force it would take to redirect them. Most importantly, they knew that sometimes the best way to defend your home was to change the shape of the battlefield itself. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet," an aide reported nervously. Captain Hyun's face appeared on the screen again. Behind him, the command center was busy with activity, but his expression was as calm as ever. "General Vextar," he said politely, "I hope you're enjoying our local weather. We get some impressive storms this time of year." "You destroyed 600,000 soldiers," Vextar shouted. "This is not warfare, this is mass murder." "No," Hyun replied, his voice becoming colder. "Mass murder is what you planned to do to our families and children. This is what happens when you threaten a people who know how to turn their entire world into a weapon." Vextar leaned forward, his forearms shaking with rage. "I still have 400,000 soldiers in orbit. I will burn your world from space. I will turn your precious colony into glass." "You could do that," Hyun agreed. "But then you'd have to explain to your empire how a simple farming colony cost you over 500,000 elite troops. Do you think they'll promote you for that kind of victory?" The alien general fell silent. He had not considered the political consequences of his losses. The Valkyrian Empire did not reward commanders who achieved expensive victories against primitive enemies. "Besides," Hyun continued, "you should probably check your orbital positions before you threaten anyone." Vexatar turned to his tactical display and felt his blood chill. While he had been focused on the ground battle, small human craft had been moving through space around his fleet. They looked like simple cargo shuttles and maintenance pods, too small and innocent to worry about. But Captain Hyun had not become a legendary military commander by using only conventional tactics. Those innocent-looking craft were crewed by volunteers who had spent the last week preparing for a suicide mission that would make the ground battle look simple. "Minho, are your people in position?" Hyun asked, though everyone could hear the conversation. "Ready as we'll ever be, sir," came the reply, this time from space. "It's been an honor serving with you." "The honor is mine," Hyun replied. "Give them hell." The small human craft suddenly accelerated toward the Valkyrian ships, their modest cargo holds filled with the most powerful explosives the colony could produce. But these were not random attacks. Sung had spent days analyzing the alien fleet's formation and identifying the critical command vessels and supply ships. The human volunteers crashed their tiny ships into carefully selected targets, creating chain reactions that crippled the entire Valkyrian fleet. Ammunition ships exploded in brilliant flowers of fire. Command vessels lost power and communications. The precise, coordinated formation dissolved into chaos as captains tried to save their own ships. In the space of minutes, General Vextar's overwhelming technological advantage had become a scattered collection of damaged vessels, fleeing from what should have been an easy victory. "Sir," his aide whispered, "we're receiving surrender requests from 7 colony worlds that were marked for invasion. They've heard about our losses here. They don't want to fight humans." Vextar stared at the tactical display showing his ruined fleet and the water-covered valley where his army had been destroyed. A simple farming colony had not just defeated him. They had made him a legend throughout the galaxy, but not the kind of legend any military commander wanted to be. On the planet below, Captain Hyun was already planning the next phase of the defense, because he knew that other enemies would come eventually, drawn by curiosity about the humans who had done the impossible. But now the galaxy would know something it had never known before. Humans didn't just fight with weapons and soldiers. They fought with their entire civilization, turning every tool, every piece of knowledge, every feature of their world into part of their defense. And that made them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. 3 months after the Great Flood that destroyed General Vextar's army, New Busan was quiet again. The valley had been reshaped by the battle, with new streams flowing where none had existed before, and rich soil deposited in fields that would grow better crops than ever. Captain Hyun stood in the rebuilt town square, watching children play near a fountain that had been constructed from pieces of Valkyrian armor. "Sir, incoming ship," reported Sung from the communication center. "But this one's different. They're requesting permission to land, not demanding surrender." Hyun was not surprised. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the humans who had turned their entire world into a weapon. Some species were terrified and avoided human space completely. Others were curious about these strange beings who fought wars with farming equipment and won battles by changing the shape of continents. "Let them land," he said, "but keep the usual precautions ready." Colonel Bora joined him in the square as a sleek alien ship settled onto the landing pad that had been built where a Velcarian base once stood. Intelligence reports say these are Velcarian diplomats, not soldiers. Apparently the Empire wants to discuss trade agreements. "Trade agreements," Hyun repeated with amusement. 6 months ago they wanted to enslave us. Now they want to buy our vegetables. The alien delegation that emerged from the ship was very different from the warriors who had invaded New Busan. These Velcarians wore elaborate robes instead of armor, and they moved carefully, respectfully, like people visiting a sacred place they didn't fully understand. Their leader approached Hyun with obvious nervousness. "Captain Hyun, I'm Ambassador Feltar. I bring greetings from the Velcarian Empire and a proposal for mutual cooperation." "Ambassador," Hyun replied politely, "welcome to New Busan. I hope your visit is more pleasant than your general's was." Feltar's mandibles clicked in what Hyun had learned was Velcarian embarrassment. General Vextar's actions were regrettable. The Empire has since adopted new policies regarding human territories. "We prefer negotiation to conflict." As they walked through the town, the ambassador's eyes constantly moved, studying everything he saw. Every farmer working in the fields, every mechanic fixing equipment, every child playing in the streets was a potential threat that his species had learned to fear. The Velcarians now understood that humans didn't separate civilian and military the way other species did. Every human was a possible warrior, and every tool was a potential weapon. "Your colony has recovered quickly," Feltar observed, watching a group of teenagers helping to install new irrigation pumps. "Our military analysts are still trying to understand how you accomplish such destruction with simple farming equipment." "It wasn't the equipment," Hyun explained as they passed a construction site where workers were building new homes. "It was the people using it. When you threaten someone's home, you don't just face their soldiers. You face their entire civilization." They stopped at a memorial that had been erected in the center of town. It was a simple stone wall with names carved into it, listing the 847 colonists who had died defending their world. The number was small compared to Velcarian losses, but each name represented someone who had died protecting the place they loved. "This is what you never understood," Hyun said, running his finger along one of the carved names. "You saw farmers and shopkeepers and thought they were weak. But these people crossed the stars to build something new. They carved fields out of wilderness and created communities where none existed before. Did you really think they would give up without a fight?" Feltar studied the memorial carefully. "Our intelligence services have spent months analyzing your defense strategies. They conclude that human warfare is unlike anything in our databases. You fight as if every person, every building, every piece of equipment is part of a single massive organism." "Because it is," Bora said, joining the conversation. "That's what you call a community. When someone attacks one of us, they attack all of us. When they threaten our home, everything we've built becomes a tool for defending it." The ambassador's translator device struggled with the concept. "This level of integration between civilian and military functions is unprecedented. Our strategists recommend that human space be classified as extreme hazard zone for any future military operations." Hyun smiled at that. "Probably wise. But you didn't come here to discuss military theory. What does the Empire want?" "Trade," Feltar replied immediately. "Your agricultural techniques produce crop yields 30% higher than standard galactic methods. Your engineering solutions are remarkably efficient. Your manufacturing processes create products that last longer and work better than comparable items from other worlds. And the Empire would like to purchase these technologies and techniques. We offer substantial payments in rare metals and energy credits." Hyun looked around the town square, where people were going about their daily business just as they had before the invasion. The only signs of the recent battle were some scorch marks on buildings and the new waterways that cut through the valley. Life in New Busan had returned to normal remarkably quickly. "We're not interested in selling our techniques," he said finally. Feltar's expression became desperate. "Captain, please reconsider. The Empire is prepared to offer extraordinary compensation." "You still don't understand," Hyun replied. Our farming methods work because they're designed by people who know this soil, this climate, this specific piece of ground. Our engineering solutions work because they're created by people who have to live with the results. You can't buy that knowledge and use it somewhere else. It only works when it's part of a community that cares about the outcome. Sung approached from the communications center, carrying a tablet with the latest intelligence reports. Sir, long-range scanners are picking up 3 more ships approaching the system. Different species this time. Looks like word is really getting around. What kind of ships? Bora asked. Diplomatic vessels, Sung replied. Apparently everyone wants to meet the humans who defeated a 1,000,000-soldier army with farming equipment. Hyun sighed. I suppose we're going to be popular for a while. Ambassador Feltar looked confused. You do not seem pleased by this attention. We never wanted to be famous for fighting, Hyun explained. We just wanted to grow crops and raise families and build a good life. But when someone tries to take that away from us, we'll use everything we have to stop them. As if to illustrate his point, a group of farmers drove past in a large harvesting machine that still showed scorch marks from its combat modifications. The aliens watched nervously as the massive vehicle rumbled by, remembering how such innocent-looking equipment had been turned into weapons of war. This is what makes humans dangerous, Bora added, noticing the ambassador's reaction. We don't have dedicated military equipment separate from our civilian tools. Everything we use to build and create can also be used to defend and destroy. Every factory that makes farming tractors can make weapons. Every farmer who knows how to move earth can figure out how to use explosives. Every engineer who designs irrigation systems can design flood control systems that can also be weaponized. Feltar was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. The Empire's xenobiologists have a new theory about human psychology. They believe your species evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that would pursue prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. They think this explains your refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Maybe, Hyun said. Or maybe we just don't like bullies. As the sun set over New Busan, painting the reconstructed valley in golden light, more ships appeared in the evening sky. Representatives from dozens of species were coming to see the small farming colony that had become the most famous world in the galaxy. But Captain Hyun wasn't worried about fame or politics or military theories. He was thinking about the next harvest season, and whether the new soil deposits from the flood would improve their crop yields. He was thinking about ordinary things, peaceful things, the kind of things that people built homes to protect. And if anyone else wanted to threaten those ordinary, peaceful things, they would discover what General Vextar had learned. When humans were defending their homes, every person became a soldier, every tool became a weapon, and every piece of ground became a battlefield. The galaxy had been warned. Some species would listen, others would learn the hard way. But New Busan would be ready either way.